Good morning, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon. I don't think it's good evening anyway. Delighted to see you all here. I wanted to show my screen. There we go. Okay, so you should be able to see and hear me fine. And just let me know if you can just type in the questions box. That'd be awesome. Fantastic. Okay, that's great. Okay, let's get things kicked off. And interesting day again. Just to reiterate a couple of key points. Obviously, these are my opinions and shouldn't be taken as representative of Go Markets. And of course, please bear in mind this is for educational purposes only. It shouldn't be taken as direct advice to take trading action. So let's have a look at what's coming across the news. Overnight was another strong session on Wall Street. Russell outperformed. There was a little bit of twitch before the CPI data came out in the US and the bond yield auction a little later, but markets survived both of those. The Nasdaq did underperform and closed near neutral, but the other indices were all to the upside. Interestingly, the US futures have been mildly negative since open. It's difficult to understand why this is, and Asian markets have looked to follow that US lead from overnight. We did get an Australian consumer inflation number which spoke to local equity markets. So the ASX was around about 0.7 higher soon after open, but then dropped significantly down to almost 1% to the downside. And so I'm suggesting that might have spooked the markets a little bit, just because we are in an inflation-sensitive environment at the moment. There is a little bit of recovery, but still in negative territory on the ASX. We'll have a look at that in a moment. The US dollar index has pulled back on further equity strength, of course, overnight, and gold's back over 1700. On the data front, we've got Eurozone interest rates, although it's a policy statement that goes along with that, that's going to potentially create the market moves. And of course, US weekly jobs, as always on a Thursday, are the data highlights. So that's what's happening. Let's just have a quick look at a couple of things as we go. Just a quick look at what Asian markets are doing. You see the Nikkei is up, the Kospi is up 1.3%. There's the weaker ASX. And we'll just go to futures. We can see that these are sort of slightly negative. We'll have a closer look at charts in a moment. You can see the USD is marginally positive. The yen looks a bit weaker again today, but we've not got a lot of movement going on in early Australian trading. You can see gold's popped its way over 1,700, and that's important. If we look at the economic news, there's those consumer inflation expectations. So about 0.6% higher than was expected, and that's what spooked local markets. As soon as that came out, we had a little bit of a sell-off. There's the ECB rate decision, and there is the jobs claims. So remember the monetary policy statement doesn't come out too much later, and in fact, it's released just before market open, so around about 45 minutes after the actual decision itself, which is expected to be no change. Okay, so let's have a look at some charts and put some meat on those bones. We'll start with the US 500. So there's the move higher in yesterday's trading. The slightly weaker session in Asia today we see on the US 500 daily. If we look at the US 2000, which is the Russell, see similar sort of picture. Heading back towards those record highs though on the Russell. The Nasdaq paused, as we said, got a big doji candle there. Did start off early in the session high. We can see that initial pop up, but then just drifted down. And so we are sort of testing a short-term support on the hourly chart, as you can see there, which is sort of interesting. But we do look as though we're holding that relatively well. And then if we look at the US dollar daily, you can see that drop off there, which is second day on the spin. And that was against most currencies with the exception of the yen, although it was marginally down on the previous day's close. it was only marginally down compared to the US dollar performance against other currencies. And you can see that some of that has been given back. In fact, all of that has been given back already in today's Asian trading, with the US dollar slightly stronger against the yen. Look at the Aussie USD. We expected some response because of that inflation data, and that's why we're a little hesitant to say that, look, that was important in terms of the market overall. But you can see that 200 MA on the hourly chart. But really, we're sort of looking at a 73.35 level of importance. If we do get a breakthrough that, we could have a fairly sharp pop up, as you can see at the start of this chart. And if we pop it on the daily, you can see that line in all its glory there and why it's important. The GB pound US dollar, again on the hourly chart, really failed to break this 139.38 level. Again, the potential for a nice pop-up if we do break it around about 50 points higher. Again, if we look on the daily chart, you can see that's the important level that we've got on there. So it is pretty significant. Doesn't look as though it's got the appetite to break through just yet, but it'd be interesting to see how we go on European Open later. So with some Japanese yen strength, and let's just put the Aussie yen on a daily chart. You can see we're pushing back up against 83.87. That's quite an important level, it looks like, and that represents, so we had the previous day's close was at that level, the high of the previous day was at that level, this high and this candle here 5 and 6 candles ago also tested that level. So if we do get a break, that could be important. And we've got a nice pivot high here back 3-4 days ago. So 84 cents, being a nice round number as well, as we talked about last night on the session, could be interesting. If we look at the Swiss franc, looks a little bit weak this morning. We'll look at the Aussie Swiss, and you can see there on the hourly chart again, we've got an interesting level that we're testing right now at around about 71.92. If we break 72, then again we could be up for another sort of 30 or 40 pips, or 30 pips on this particular chart. So some reasonable action going on there, but nothing massively compelling. And then again, nimble is the key, particularly with that big data out later on today. If we look at GB pound Kiwi, look on the daily chart first of all, you can see really we've failed to break this level at 193.65. We've tried for the last 4 sessions, so we're going to have another pop today, it looks like. But if we do get some movement over maybe this 194 level again, we're looking at this. We're looking at a significant move on the daily chart. In the first instance, possibly around about 180 pips. So look at the hourly chart. The problem with this is you can see here we've hit this peak a few times and fallen back. So this is why it's good to look at, even if you're trading long term, good to have a look at the shorter term chart as well. Let's flip it on its head from what we normally talk about. Good to see here, Ross, by the way. So 194.50 would be where we would put this at. As an interesting level. So that's really where the FX markets are at. Just look at a couple of the maybe a couple of the European indices as well. Here's the FTSE down in Asian trading so far, you can see, but if we look at the daily chart, we've really got a level there of around about 6752 of interest. And if we look at the DAX, you can see continues its strength higher. So that's been a good trade for those who traded the breakout of this 14139 level. All good. So let's just have a quick look at Aussie shares. We can pop on, just do a quick refresh. And we see there we're significantly off our lows. We've gained over the last sort of 45 minutes after that fairly significant drop. You can see we're up here fairly healthily after everything opened, and then we just dropped like a stone after the inflation data came out. But we are starting to see some recovery. As I said, no impact on the AUD at all, which means that it's, in terms of importance in the market, may not be a long term, but you can see this still more decliners than advances, and most things that were struggling a little bit have regained some strength. Afterpay and Zip are looking particularly weak. The banks aren't particularly looking favourable today on that weaker bond yield news. So you can see there's ANZ, there's CBA down 0.73. We did have a look at Bingo yesterday. We'll have a look again. Again, resources are a bit of a drag. There's BHP down again. Now the the sector that we've talked about before, the travel sector, you see Webjet up 2.2%. Qantas are bouncing all over the place today. They are up 1.5%, but we're actually up near 535 early in the session before that drop off on the open. So if this continues, we would expect them perhaps to move higher as well. Getting some strength in healthcare a little bit, and Flight Centre. Let's see what's happening to Flight Centre. Flight Centre up. Whoa. Flight Centre up 9%. I'm not really not sure what's happened there. That looks like possibly an analyst upgrade. There doesn't appear to be any news attached to that, but that's pretty special. But you can see Fortescue in that resource space down 1.5%. And yep, all good. So let's have a look at some charts. We didn't have a look at the yen daily, but there's nothing going on. Sorry, the Nikkei daily, but there's nothing much going on there. We talked BHP, and we're really sort of, when we met on Tuesday, we got a bit concerned about BHP, that all the resource sector were looking a little weak. Now we've actually got a candle which is testing the 50 EMA, which is that second yellow line. You can see that red candle is testing right now. It's off its lows of the session, but nevertheless looking very precarious. So technically you'd want it to be back up over 47 with comfort to feel comfortable. We talked about Bingo the other day, and there we go. So a real nice pop higher on Bingo. If we get a close here, it will represent a new high, but that's a substantial move up. You can see there. If we put it on a line chart, you'll see how it breaks these previous closing highs, which are all around this 30.28 level. So we talked about a break of 330 on Tuesday being possibly significant, and that could be happening as we speak. Flight Centre, no idea why this has done this, but there we go. There's a pretty impressive candle, and absolutely smashed the previous level we're looking at around about 18.15. So blew that out of the water. If we look at other more sedate travel stocks, you can see Qantas closing high yesterday since November last year. I thought it was a bit of a dodgy candle, and then we got this shoot up this morning. You can see it if we put it on a 15-minute chart. Shot up out of the blocks, shifted down really to below yesterday's close, and then, or at yesterday's close, but then has just gained a little bit over the last sort of half an hour or so. And Webjet, if we put Webjet on, not a dissimilar picture. So shot up on open, dropped back, looks as though it's gaining some steam again to the upside, and you can see why this level is important. There's the previous high close at $6. We're slightly above that now, and you can see this would represent a high not seen since February last year if we can break $6 with something significant. LYC are worth a look. sorry, let's just do some retailers. Let's just look at JB Hi-Fi. Seem to have been chatting about this one forever. Yesterday's candle was impressive, took us over that 47 level that we've been chatting about. We're now at 47.88. Just be aware that the next key level is around about there at 48.75. So we have got almost $1 from where we're trading now, but that may be the more attractive entry. And Kogan still refused to bounce. Look as though they're trying to find some support, but we did this last week as well. And this stock looks looks like one you want to keep well away from. Even on the short side, it's not looking convincing. And as I said, we're just seeing the banks pull back a little bit as well. Look at ANZ as an example. So last 3 trading sessions, there's the doji candle at the top, and the last 2 sessions have just pulled it back a little bit. I think it said on Tuesday, it wouldn't surprise me to see it back towards $27 if this continues, if we get a settling down of the bond yields going forward. Government flight subsidies. Okay, that's what's helped that stock. Good spot, Ian. Well, that would suggest that those 3 we looked at are possibly worth a look at towards the back end of the day. Zero were an interesting one. We actually thought that they might have the steam to push back over the 200 MA, but not yet. And as I said, APT have decided to pull back, but off the lows of the session. So really looks fairly well supported around about 103. And we're really sort of looking to hold on to 106 as an important level and maybe tackle this 120 again. I must admit, I did think we were up for a nice move higher after yesterday's session, but obviously we did start up, but again, like a lot of stocks this morning, once open occurred, we just dropped off. But you can see that bounce off that 106 level, which looks important. If we look to the US for a couple of, we'll come back in a moment. We'll look to the US, stick it on a daily chart. Twitter seems to have pulled back, trying to find support at around about this 64.80 level. So patience is required on this. If we put it on a line chart, there's a nice, it looked as though it was going to go down. Those shorter term moving averages are looking slightly precarious, so wouldn't be touching this for right now. eBay, I can certainly look at that, but I'm not convinced. We've got a 200 MA that it's bounced off on the daily chart. That looks important. If we put it on a line chart, you'll just see quite a lot of price action around this level it closed yesterday, that 55.25. So we've got to move through it. We've got to retest yesterday, rejected and moved beneath it. So we're wanting to see it push higher from here. But again, I'd probably be quite conservative about this, maybe even up as high as 57 to demonstrate that reversal is complete. For those of you more aggressive, perhaps 56.60 might be a level to look at. For sure, Coke, let's just let this catch up. So Coke hit a high 3 trading sessions ago, not seen since the beginning of the year. Then had an engulfing bearish candle and then managed to have, this is termed an inside bar. So if we do get a move up, that's quite a strong technical signal. But I'm thinking there's probably better opportunities than this kicking around, because we've got a level there at 52.11. That's only about 70 higher. So I'm not convinced of this as a potential trade. at this stage. And if we look at ex-US steel, again, this is one we've tracked before. We can see a nice move higher on this, edging higher, and look for a test around about 15% up of that. So in terms of our stock chart of the day in the US, it's X. Our index chart of the day remains the DAX, and our, let's just bring this up, and our FX chart of the day is the Aussie yen, looking for a potential tackle of 84 cents. Look at the ASX 200 chart. I don't tend to use the AO very much, to be honest, Anthony. Is the divergence on the AO? What I would say is that the ASX is still trading in between two key levels. Those are the two key levels I think are important. If we pop on the AO, sorry, I'm just finding it. There we go. As a momentum oscillator, I prefer the MACD. Is that the AC? That's, sorry. There we go. So we've got, well, not really. So essentially we've got a lower momentum in this. So there's nothing there that's smacking to me of a move down. There is a cross of the shorter term moving averages, but really they're flatlining, and they're not. So although the MACD and the AO are both showing a momentum to the downside, you would expect that with that slight move. But look at both of them, irrespective of whether you look at the MACD or the AO, it's really tight. There's no clear trend there at all, which is consistent with the fact that it's in a sideways trend. And you can see how if we sort of start to head lower again, then that could be interesting from a technical point of view. Our next level of interest is probably around the 6622 level. Actually, probably a bit lower than that, probably 6600. So we could see this continuing downwards. But with the US futures holding neutral, with what's happened today being a clear, really as a result of a clear data number which hasn't been reflected in the AUD. I'm sort of thinking we might well hold on to this level again, but nevertheless, a good call to have a look at that, Anthony. Thank you very much, mate. Okay, let's just check back in with the index as a whole to see where we're heading. So look, we're nearly neutral again. I mean, that's really the nature of the beast today. It's very, very choppy in Australia, and that's, again, as I said, there doesn't appear to be. If the markets were really upset about that, you would see that in the AUD. We're not seeing it in the AUD. We are seeing the knee-jerk response in the ASX 200 being rejected, but near neutral isn't really very good, of course. So just keep on checking on this, because it's going to make decisions really quite tough. Let's just see what those yeah, Qantas is edging higher again. Okay. Yeah. So look, I can't see any other any other requests. New Zealand dollar yen. See if it's performing any better than its Australian counterpart. Again, looking strong on the daily over the last 3 days. So I would have put a there we go. So we've got about 76 pips up to that level. If we look on the hourly chart, we've got a nice little pop up. If it breaks this pivot high there, around about 78.15. Let's just pop it on the back on the daily, just put that higher level in. Back on the hourly. There it is. So plenty of upside on this if we break this level here. So that could be one to watch. Certainly we've got increased volume associated with this move. We've got the MACD signal line dropping below the histograms, suggesting a continuation of trend. So yeah, interesting chart. Just have a quick check back on the state of the Aussie yen. You can see that's now testing this level at getting very close to that 84. So we'll stick with our chart of the day for that. I hope that's useful. I'm going to because there isn't anything else there to have a look at. The markets are in a bit of flux. You need to be careful. You need to be nimble. Obviously, follow your trading plan. I'm going to say goodbye for now. We'll catch you next Tuesday. And for those of you attending the session on Monday, then we'll look forward to seeing you there. Okay, bye-bye for now. You too, guys. Have a good day as well.